Hello everyone and welcome to the British Birthing Stories podcast. Each week I'll be speaking with a different mother about her story of childbirth. Let's get into today's story. Hello, quick one before we get into today's episode. I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who has already left me a review or followed the show or followed us on social media. It means the absolute world. And if you haven't done so already, please do hit the follow, like, or subscribe button and share these stories with all your mates who are expecting. I would be so appreciative. And if you're really enjoying the episodes and the show, it would be awesome if you could leave us a review. It helps us grow the podcast. And my aim is to get as many stories out as I can. And reviews are a really great way of getting my podcast out there. So if you are happy and loving it, it would be really great if you could leave me a review. In today's birth story, we're joined by Erin, who shares her first birth experience with her son. She had a positive hospital induction and she was 21 at the time, so this is quite a while ago, but it's a really great story to see how a really young woman could advocate for herself and have a positive experience. And Erin shares some really candid advice and tips on what it's like juggling motherhood at that age. I love receiving positive induction stories because I feel like there is a really big stigma on them being bad, and I think it's really great to get as many positive stories out there as we can. So let's get into today's story. Hi Erin, welcome back to the show. It's really good to have you on.
Hi, thank you.
I'd like to start off with asking you a little bit about yourself and who's in your family.
Okay, it's myself, my husband, Lewis. We got married in 2018. We've got a 9-year-old son, Frankie, and a 2-year-old daughter called Josie.
Oh, lovely. So can you talk me through your journey to conception with Frankie? Did you mean to conceive when you did? Was that a planned pregnancy?
No, I'd been on the depot injection for some time, and it was suggested that I'd come off it to have a bit of a break. And in that break, which was quite a short break really, I was told that it was highly unlikely that I'd conceive whilst I made the decision to either continue on that form of contraception or decide to go on something else. So they sort of said because it had been in my system for so long, the likelihood of me conceiving would have been really slim. But that wasn't our case, really. I'd had a 3-month gap, which I don't know if it's considered long or not, but then conceived during that time.
Wow, I've never heard of the depot injection. Is that a new kind of contraception?
No, it's been around for years.
Oh.
It lasts you have it, I think it's every 3 months. It's been some time since I've been on it, but I think it's every 3 months that you go for it, and it covers you for that duration. But if you have I think it's longer than 5 years on it, they ask you to have a break because sort of long-term use, it can give you sort of side effects after long-term use.
Gotcha. And you felt all right on it?
Yeah, fine. Yeah, I didn't have any periods or anything whilst I was on it. Didn't have any adverse symptoms or anything like that. It was easy enough to do. I'd just book the next appointment sort of whilst I was there. So it was scheduled again for the next 3 months, and it'd cover me during that time. So it felt simple. It felt easy to me to maintain.
So then how did it feel getting that positive pregnancy test?
I felt quite young at the time. I was 21, which I suppose isn't too young, but it's not too old either. It was definitely a shock because we were both still living at home at the time, traveling as often as we could, and just sort of floating on by. We were just sort of doing our own thing because we had the freedom and we were financially able to do that. And then all of a sudden it was definitely a shock to the system, but it was a happy shock. It wasn't sort of, obviously you have the fears that come with it, but they didn't really last.
Yeah. And what were your preconceptions of birth? Did you have anything in mind of how you wanted it to go, or what was your kind of like your history of it all?
So growing up, I wanted to be a midwife. So I'd like to think that I was sort of all my options and things in school were all sort of with the idea of doing midwifery at the end. That was the end goal. But somewhere along the way, that sort of changed. But I'd done a lot of research in the years, and it was fascinating. Birth and labour and conception, everything was fascinating to me anyway. So I felt I knew a lot about it, especially for my age. And I'd had a lot of friends that had had babies too. So it didn't feel totally unnatural or totally out of my comfort zone. It almost felt like, and we knew we wanted children, so it just was at a time that we sort of hadn't really expected.
Nice. That's exciting. And how were your first kind of signs and pregnancy symptoms? Did you kind of have a hunch that you were pregnant because you were super sick, or?
No, nothing. I had no symptoms, which is quite bizarre. Um, I'd had maybe, I think at that point, because I'd only been on the off of the injection, I was still waiting for a period to arrive following that. So that's why I was under the impression that it was still within my system. And so I didn't actually have a bleed between going off the depot and conceiving.
Mm.
But at the time, I didn't realise that that was a thing, that you could ovulate without a period and vice versa.
Yeah.
So, that I was a bit naive to that bit, but obviously I've learned a lot since. So I knew what I wanted, because it's all fascinated me like throughout my years. I knew that I wanted like as little intervention as possible. I sort of had a birth plan, but it was a bit more of a, go with the flow and sort of expect the unexpected and trust my body and all that lot. It was, I had sort of a plan A and plan B along the way, but ultimately the end goal was both of us being happy and healthy and the baby arriving safely.
Yeah.
However that looked at the time. But I wasn't totally naive I would have liked a water birth, but again, I knew that was like subject to conditions in the hospital, or it was just one of them. If it was available to me and I was able to, then I'd go for it. If not, okay, it's not the end of the world.
And did you go through the like regular NHS midwife-led care model? Were you low risk, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, exactly that. Totally low risk the entirety of my pregnancy. Everything was normal. I had like a gestational diabetes test because I was just on the cusp for that, but that came back clear. Everything was really, it felt quite easy, which is quite strange to say. I worked quite late into my pregnancy as well because we moved house about 5 or 6 weeks before he was born.
Oh.
So it was all go. We'd moved into the house. I think I was 35 weeks or 34 weeks pregnant when we moved house. And then I stopped working at 38 weeks. And then he was born. He was 5 days late, so 40 plus 5. So I had a little bit of time sort of to get things together in preparation for his arrival, really.
I suppose your age probably helped quite a lot in you having such a good pregnancy. I mean, if you think back to what we would have been like when we were walking around like cavemen, women would have had babies so young.
Exactly. And
You
I
would
was
have been
still
at your
so
peak.
active. That's it. I was in quite a fairly active job. So I was on my feet a lot, walking a lot, sort of bending, stretching, that sort of thing within my job. So that sort of kept me so I wasn't sort of tightening up or, seizing up or anything like that. I kept busy. And it was thankfully quite a low stress job. So it wasn't bad. I feel really lucky to have such a positive first experience of pregnancy.
And then how did you feel as you went into your second and third trimester? Did you have any like issues, aches, pains, like?
The main was heartburn, like indigestion, getting that sort of that hot, acidy bile rising, mainly if I'd sit up too fast or if I'd lie down or sleep on a particular angle or things like that. But it was managed. I'd just sort of take Rennies. It didn't ever need anything more than that. I could keep on top of it that way. So it was highly annoying, but it was something that I could deal with. It wasn't, it didn't feel severe.
Yeah.
It felt manageable. So I probably would have moaned about it at the time, but it wasn't sort of. And towards the third trimester, just the normal aches and pains, the round ligament pain, restless legs, difficulty sleeping.
Yeah.
But other than that, nothing sort of substantial that stands out.
And then were you hoping to then have a hospital birth, and was there any birth prep like hypnobirthing or like, I don't know, book reading, podcast listening to, like what did you do to kind of get yourself ready?
So at the time, sort of podcasts and sort of hypnobirthing weren't as sort of spoken about as it is now. It wasn't then. It probably was there, but sort of not
Not
as sort of
many.
in your face. Yeah, but there was like YouTube videos and things that I'd watch if those YouTubers that I'd liked throughout the years. I'd just go through that, and there was a class being ran locally to me that you could pop in, and find out things about labour, birth, delivery, like baby in the first 6 weeks, little things like that. So if I was able to, I'd go to those, which I tried to make a conscious effort to go to them, just to try and gear myself up and arm myself with as much knowledge as I could, really.
And did you have any continuity of care with your midwives? Did you have the same midwife, or was it kind of chopping and changing a bit?
It was my GP sort of midwife, the community midwife was the same lady, but towards the end of my pregnancy, she actually retired. So it was the same midwife for almost the entirety of my pregnancy up until towards the end. But you sort of get to know the midwives where I am, because it's quite a small town. And with the community midwives, you sort of see them here and there anyway, so you sort of get to know them along the way. Even if one of them was off sick or on annual leave or things, they'd fill in. So you'd sort of become familiar with everyone and feel sort of comfortable being with whoever. So it wasn't a massive issue.
Yeah, yeah. And as you were coming into like, the due date, I guess,
Yeah.
how were you feeling? Did you have any signs of labour? You said this was an induction, so talk us through that process.
So towards the end of my pregnancy, I can't remember the gestation, but on my due date, oh no, sorry, the day before my due date, I was admitted to hospital with my third case of reduced movements. So obviously they kept me in for monitoring, things like that. I had a couple of Doppler scans just to ensure the baby was okay. And they said, "Oh, well, you're due tomorrow. Let's keep you in, see how you are. We'll monitor you on like sporadically and see how you get on." And whilst on the monitor, he'd have like a good reading, and then the next one would be a bit ski with, and then he'd have a good reading, and then the next one would be a bit ski with. So it wasn't that they were totally unhappy with it, but they weren't confident to let me go home either. So they said, "Look, you're due. We'll keep you in. The likelihood of you leaving without your baby now is slim." So they kept me in, and I was sort of on the list to become induced. It was decided that I'd get induced with the pessary. They have a 6-hour and a 12-hour one. I had the 12-hour one inserted, and after an hour, it came away itself. It just sort of fell out.
Is that what it's meant to do?
It is, but when you're sort of 3 to 4 centimeters, and I wasn't that. So what they thought it was that the hormone, my body just didn't really like the hormone, and it was sort of like expelling it. So they were like, "Oh, it could just be fluke. Let's put another one in, and we'll see how you sort of progress in the meanwhile." So they put a 6-hour one in, and that fell out within an hour as well. So then they tried another 12-hour one, but none of them lasted longer than an hour. And by this point, I was getting a little bit sort of fed up and a bit sore. So I was like, "Oh, can I just have a break? Like, can I just decide what I want to do next? And I'll stay on the list." And I was having a couple of contractions, but they were really irregular, really sporadic. And I was still on the list to go over. But in the meantime, there was still some like emergencies coming up and labouring women on the wards that were sort of much further into their labour than what I was at this point.
Also, were you feeling much pain with the pessary? Because I've heard sometimes they can feel quite painful.
The first one putting in wasn't painful, but it was definitely uncomfortable. It wasn't a natural sort of feeling. But then with each one, it became more sore. But
Yeah.
that's sort of just due to the nature of obviously the procedure, I suppose. And usually when they put one in, it lasts sort of the duration of how long it's meant to be in for, 6 or 12 hours, unless you reach a point where you're dilated enough for it to fall out on its own. But neither of those happened to me. It just came out on its own. So it was just felt a bit deflated at that point, but just decided to wait. And once you're sort of on the ward, and because they'd essentially already started the induction process, you're not allowed to go home after that, because you're in admission then. You're sort of on the ward.
Yeah. How did you feel about that? Were you a bit like bummed out, like, oh God, they've tried to start this induction, it's not working?
Yeah, so I think I went in on the 29th of July. I think this was like the 30th or the 1st, maybe I can't remember now. Sorry, the dates
That's
are a bit
okay.
blurry. It was so long
It was 8 years ago.
Yeah, 9.
No, I wouldn't expect you to remember.
Yeah, that's it. It was a couple of days in, so they sort of gave me a rest day, and they still monitored him, and his movements were a bit iffy. But what we didn't know at this point was that my waters had been leaking, like
Gotcha.
really slowly. But there was no really clear evidence of that happening. So we think now, sort of during the cause of the sporadic movements was due to the loss of the fluids.
Interesting.
But that wasn't sort of picked up on. But it felt like I was in the right place to be monitored, and just in case. And I'm still on the list. And then eventually, it was my turn to go over to the labour ward, and they said, we're going to try and break your waters. And it felt like forever. I'd only been in 2 days at this point, but that 2 days felt longer than my entire pregnancy.
I bet.
It was wild.
Can I ask, because I've not had my waters broken before, how do they do that?
So the artificial rupture of the membranes is, it's almost like a crochet hook. Have you ever seen one of those with a small sort of hook at the top?
I can picture it.
Yeah, so it's long and plastic, and it's got a hook on the end, but it's not sharp in the sense where you'd cut your finger on it, but it's hard enough to rupture like the sac.
Gotcha.
So it's sort of like angled. If you googled it, it'd sort of probably be how you'd imagine it to be.
Yeah. Did it hurt?
So no, not at all. Not at all. Which was really positive. But what people don't realise is that you've got forewaters and hindwaters. So what had happened is my forewaters were the ones that had trickled. So my hindwaters were still there, and his head was so low onto my cervix that it was essentially acting as a plug. So once they'd moved his head ever so slightly to rupture the sac, it wasn't a lot of water that came out from him at all, which again explained the iffy movements.
Yeah.
The slowed down movements. And it wasn't a lot, like you see on movies when it's this massive gush. It wasn't that at all. But by this point, I think they'd been leaking must have been around 3 to 4 days at this point.
So when they'd been leaking, do you, just in case this happens to someone else, so you'd obviously figured out they'd been slowly trickling away. At the time, do you remember thinking like, oh, it feels like I'm just damper down there? Or could you honestly say, like, on reflection, no, I had no idea? Or
looking back now, maybe there should have been more of an I should have had a bit of an inclination that was a thing. But the midwives sort of ask you, like, oh, any discharge, any leaking, do you want to put a pad on? And they monitor that way. But because it wasn't a massive amount of water, and because your bodily fluids change so drastically during pregnancy that you sort of don't really know what's what, and especially towards the end of the pregnancy, like sometimes you might trickle and pee yourself a little, and you might go, oh, what's that? Like, I don't really, and you can't really differentiate between what's what, especially when it's your first pregnancy, because you don't know what to expect.
Yeah, definitely. So they broke your waters. What happened next?
It was all go from there. It was almost as soon as they broke my waters, my contractions came thick and fast, and there was not a lot of time between them at all. My body just kicked into go mode. It knew what to do. It was like it was just waiting for that water just to go. But its head was sort of acting as a plug in the way. So yeah, they broke my waters at, I think it was about 6:30 at night.
Yeah.
So I was monitored, had a cannula, all that good stuff, was dealing with the contractions really well.
Were you on constant CTG monitoring? I assume you must have been.
Yes, I was. And at this point, I had a TENS machine hooked up to my back as well, just to help with the contractions. But I found as they got worse and closer together, I felt a bit claustrophobic with it. Like it had helped with the early contractions. It was absolutely fantastic. It worked so well. But when they became sort of to the point of where they felt almost unbearable, the wires on the TENS machine, it just felt like something else that my mind was occupied on.
Yeah.
So I just ripped it off. I was like, I can't have that on me. I'm getting overstimulated with it. Just get it off. I just need to breathe and focus on the contractions that are coming.
And don't you reckon it's that you've got to time it perfectly? If you can't get it working at the time of the contraction, you're trying to fiddle with it. It's like...
Yeah, so I had mine on sort of like a pulse setting that was really good.
Gotcha.
So that helped like massively, like tons. Definitely in the early stages, I would recommend that to anyone. If this, but I've used it for back pain in the past, so I sort of knew how it worked.
Yeah.
So I had sort of an idea of what worked for me and like the placement of it and stuff. So I got that quite right quite early on, which was definitely helpful.
And did they check your dilation at any point, or were they kind of just like letting you go with it for a while?
Yeah, they let me go for a while, and the contractions were thick and fast, and they knew how dilated I was from breaking my waters. I was 4 to 5 centimeters at that point.
Oh, good.
And then I started with some gas and air. So I think it was about half 6, quarter to 7 when my waters went. And then I wasn't checked then till around 9, half 9.
Yeah.
And that's when I started on the gas and air.
Yeah.
Just to focus on something else really, and not the pain. And it really does. I don't know if it does help with the pain, but it definitely does take your mind off things, which is helpful, and it does just make you regulate your breathing a bit better, which makes you tolerate pain a bit better as well, or it did in my case.
And did you feel like it ramped up really quickly at that point? Were you suddenly like, did you feel like you had then kind of got into your active labour stage?
Yeah, definitely. So the lady that walked us over to the labour suite, we actually knew, and she sort of hooked me up, started to do all my monitoring, and did broke my waters and things. And then she actually left around 9 p.m. and swapped with a new midwife that was on shift, or it might have been about 9:30. And she said, I would have been ashamed to have a baby, sort of thing, before you went, but I'm back on shift tomorrow. I'll come and see how you're getting on. So I said, oh, do you like, what do you think the odds are of me having this baby tonight? And she went, oh, well, like, you are progressing really well. She said, but these first babies can sometimes take a little bit longer. She wasn't sort of saying, I don't really think, I think the odds are slim that you'll have the baby tonight. But obviously you don't really know what's going to happen, do you? So she left at about 9. Yeah, about 9, half 9. She said, I'll come and check on you in the morning. Hopefully we'll have baby in the morning when I'm back on shift and things. Yeah, so but by that point, I could still hold a conversation, you know. But yeah, it did feel like I was getting to a point of, wow, this is something's happening, and I don't feel like I'm sort of in control of the pains anymore. So, but that's where the gas and air definitely helped.
And your birth partner, whoever was there present with you, were they of much use? Were you just like, leave me alone?
Oh no, definitely. Early when I started having the gas and air, I could sort of rest between contractions. When they got really, really ramped up. I got checked again maybe 10:30. And I was quite advanced. I think I was 8 centimeters at that point.
Mm.
So again, I'd progressed really quickly, especially for a first baby, they kept saying.
Mm.
And by that point, I needed something else. I was getting a bit fidgety, so I tried to change position because I was lay on my back at this point. So to help the contractions, I tried to flip over and go onto all fours, but with the back of the bed sort of raised.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. Were you kind of holding on to the top of the bed?
Yes, but with one hand.
Yeah.
Because the other hand had the gas and air in.
Gotcha.
But then Lewis would hold the gas and air for me so I could try and concentrate. But I had a cannula on the top of one of my hands. And if I bent my hand back, I was quite aware of the plasticky bit.
And it hurts.
Yeah. So it wasn't for me, that position, which I'm surprised about. But I tried it, and no, I couldn't focus at all.
Yeah, could you move much? Because obviously you've got the cannula, you've got the gas and air machine you've got to deal with. Then you've got CTG monitoring. Could you move around your room, or were you on the bed mostly?
On the bed mostly, to be honest. The only time I was away was when I needed the toilet. But because I was keeping myself hydrated, it felt like I needed the toilet a lot. And they were like, "No, you don't need a wee. You've not long been." And I was like, "No, I really do. I really do need a wee." So they'd get me off the monitor, let me go to the toilet, which was just over the way from my room.
Must have just been the pressure as well.
Yeah, possibly.
On your bladder, like you're just moving down so quickly and you're progressing so well.
Yeah, definitely. But when it started to get a bit too much, they offered me an alternative pain relief, which was diamorphine, which is a form of morphine that they administer in the top of the thigh.
So is that similar to pethidine, do you know? Is that maybe what they used before pethidine?
No, it's similar. It's similar. I don't know in what way. I think it's classed as an opioid or something like that.
Does the same thing, basically.
Yeah, but I did not like it.
How so?
It made me a bit too spaced out. I felt like I wasn't in control or aware of certain things.
Yeah.
I've never taken drugs before, so that was my first experience of. I know it's a controlled drug, but still
an opiate.
I'd never had that sense of
out of body
control. Yeah, it's quite a bizarre thing when you're so focused on the task at hand, which is having a baby, that it sort of throws you off entirely because you don't know how you're going to handle it. Some people might like that feeling, but to me, it was just too much too soon.
Yeah. Did you feel nauseous at all with it as well, or were you fine that way?
No, I was fine, thankfully. Absolutely fine. Didn't have any other symptoms. Just literally just the spaced outness of it all.
How long did that feeling last for? Do you remember?
Well, I won't lie. I was still pretty out of it after he was born.
I've heard friends say this. Yeah.
What happened was I was offered that, and it was administered straight away once I decided what to. I think they offered me the gas and air, pethidine, and diamorphine, and I just said whichever will help the best and work the quickest, or something along those lines. But by the time I'd had the injection and the symptoms started, he was born 45 minutes later.
Wow.
Which is really quick. So just as it was fully sort of taken over my body, he was born. So when he was born, I was like still woozy, thinking, oh my word, what's just happened? And then all of a sudden they're like, here's your baby, hold him. Do you know, you don't really get a chance to sort of breathe or realize what's just happened.
Yeah.
Because everything feels a little bit delayed, or it did for me. Everything felt a bit delayed with the diamorphine.
How was the pushing stage for you? Did you really notice that transition phase?
Yeah, it was a bit like I need a poo. And they were
Yeah.
like, well, you probably don't. And I was like, well, something's happening down there. And it was like, yeah, baby's right there. Baby's ready to go. You sort of at 10, let's get down to business sort of thing. Let's have a baby. So they put the stirrups up because I was still on my back at this point.
Yeah.
I never sort of envisaged myself giving birth on my back for some reason, but it felt most comfortable for me, so I just went with it.
Yeah.
I was sort of sat up, but with my back was sort of upright, and I was sat on an angle, but my legs were up as well. So there was a little bit of gravity sort of helping as well. Maybe that helped. But the pushing stage it felt really well. I don't really remember how it felt in terms of time, but I didn't do many pushes before they said with every push his heart rate is sort of dipping. So we need to concentrate and make sure these pushes are the best pushes you can give us, so we get the best out of them to get the baby here quicker.
No pressure.
Pretty much. And I was still a bit out of it, but I was really trying to focus on what they were saying and trying to sense if there was how much urgency there was in their voices and by their faces. And you can sort of feel the tension in the room sort of change a little.
And did he keep moving down, or was he kind of popping back up a bit, or was it a constant?
No, he was moving. He was moving, not fast, but with every push, they were decent pushes. So it was evident they were doing the thing, what was intended.
Yeah.
But then it sort of changed, and the midwife went, "I'm just going to get the doctor just to look at this reading, his heart rate, because obviously she'd noticed the decelerations every time I had a decent push." And the doctor came in, looked, watched me push once and said, "Right, Erin, I need the best pushes you've ever given in your whole entire life with everything that you've got, or we're going to have to intervene." And he didn't even have to tell me how they were going to intervene, whether that was going to be an episiotomy, forceps, ventouse, C-section. That was enough to spark some fire in me for me to say, no way, I've got this far. Now, I've not got this far to only get this far. If I'm as close as they think I am to having this baby, that's what I'm doing. And I really had to really focus, and because it was really hard because of the drugs. And then you've got sort of my now husband Lewis. We weren't married at the time. My mum next to him as my birth partners, and then I had a midwife next to me, and then I had a student midwife, and then I had a consultant. So that's already five other people in the room, and we all want the same thing: the baby to be born healthy, quickly. But they were all saying, "Push, push, 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 go on, push, push now, push, push, harder, good girl, good." And I just went, "Shut up, shut up." Shut up. I said, please, everyone, stop barking orders at me. I know what I need to do. Let me just focus. And I can't focus while you're all giving me these orders. That I know what I need to do, but I need to focus. And I probably was a bit bossy, actually. But when you're in pain and everything's imminent, you have to sort of you act in a weird way. And so they did. They all was sort of silent, and he was born on the next push.
Oh, so good.
Well, sorry, his head was born on the next push, and then his body was born on the push after, on the contraction after.
How did you feel?
Euphoric. I just remember thinking, "Oh my God, I've done it!" Like my head I remember it so vividly. My head just flung backwards, and it was just a big sigh of relief. Like, "Oh my God! Like I can't believe I've just done that. I can't believe I've just done that. Wow!" Like, that my whole pregnancy feels like it's gone by in a flash, and it was all down. It was that moment, like that was like the pinnacle of it all, and I've just done it. All this thing that I've built up in my mind for 9 months or even years before, because we all have sort of our ideal births and things like that, like the plans, and he was here. We didn't find out the gender, so my husband announced that we'd had a little boy. So we knew then that we'd got a son. And yeah, it was amazing. And there was just like the whole room was sobbing, sort of thing, like with happy sobs. And yeah, it was just, yeah, it was really, really cool. And just trying to take it all in, sort of taking in what he looked like and felt like and smelt like, and but while still feeling a bit woozy myself.
Mm.
And it's hard, that, because you really want to focus so you don't forget any of these little details. And then obviously they weigh them and stuff like that, and I said, "Oh, make sure you take pictures, because you want something to look back on and things." And yeah, it was wild, but it was wonderful. Honestly, it was.
Did you find the pushing stage difficult? And did you find that there was a ring of fire? Did that bit hurt? How did that feel?
Oh yeah, the ring of fire, because so many people sort of tell you about it. It's always subconsciously in the back of the mind, because you sort of know it's coming, but you only really know it's coming when it's there. And it's like, wow. And I remember someone saying, when the ring of fire comes, just pant like an out of breath dog, like like panting. So that apparently that there's something to your breath, and something to do with it makes sure that the baby sort of stays in the position they're in rather than bobs back up. So you sort of, it's not a 2-step forward, 1 step back sort of thing. So I did that, and that seemed to help for me. It didn't last as long as I thought it was going to, because he was born quite quick.
Yeah.
But it was the pain, the ring of fire to what I experienced was very similar to what other people that have experienced it described.
Manageable though?
Yeah, but maybe due to the fact he was born so quick, because his head was born in one contraction in the entirety of the body in the next. It was quick. It wasn't. It was maybe 30 seconds, if that, because that's how close my contractions were at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it does. So he comes, he's born and he's on your chest. Did he take to breastfeeding easily and well? And how were you in terms of any cuts, grazes, things like that?
So I had one graze, a minor graze. They did one suture, so literally one small stitch, just to help the healing process. Didn't feel that. That was done after the placenta was born.
Was that a managed placental birth?
Yeah, so I had the injection. Again, I didn't, because I was a bit younger, I hadn't really fully informed myself or researched much like that. I just thought it was a given, not like a choice. So I felt informed, decided to have it, but now I know more about it. With my second birth, I didn't have it, but that was a choice that was 7 years down the line, or 7 years more sort of equipped and knowledgeable and clued up. So it felt the right decision at the time. But then for my second birth, I decided against it for different reasons, because I'd done more research on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so did you get a golden hour with him and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it felt like a golden minute. It did not feel long at all. But again, I was still sort of a bit, obviously there was adrenaline there as well, because of the rush of everything that had just happened, and all like the rush of love, and all your hormones go all wild. And yeah, so the midwife, once he was put on me, and they said, "Oh, do you want to? How are you intending to feed?" And I said, "Oh, I'd like to breastfeed," but at this point, my arms were still a bit numb from the drugs. So the positioning and everything wasn't right, and it was like there was a delay between what I was trying to make my body do and the thought to make my body do it. There was like a lag. But again, that was due to the drugs, I think. And they don't really tell you of the after effects of it, and that it can actually affect the baby too, because it does pass through to them.
Yeah.
And Frankie was quite sleepy for probably 3 days following his birth.
Yeah. I mean, helpful, but
yeah, in some sense, yeah, like it was still your typical newborn, like waking up frequently to feed and things like that. But equally, he wasn't waking as frequently as they would have liked to, because I wanted to breastfeed. But I didn't. Again, I was still quite out of it. I needed a bit of help. It was my first time sort of learning that skill as well. It didn't really happen. So I had a bit of help overnight by the midwives and the healthcare people. They helped, and the lactation person come round. But I was having to wake him up to feed and strip him off to wake him up because he was just so lethargic due to the diamorphine. Yeah, so we eventually moved on to formula after 6 weeks of pumping.
Yeah.
He was sort of combi fed with my milk from a bottle and formula as well, and then by week 6 he was fully formula fed. But at the time I was quite gutted with what happened, but I beat myself up a bit about it. But looking back now, again, I'm an older, wiser
mother.
It worked like that because it had to, and at the time I did my best and I didn't really know where to get support from, so no wonder it worked out like that. But I was sort of so hell-bent on feeding if I went on to have any more children. I knew I wanted to do more research and have a better crack at it. So,
and you absolutely did nothing wrong. Like, it's so hard now, isn't it?
Definitely. And at the time, none of my friends, I think maybe 1 or 2 of my friends had pumped, but none of my friends had breastfed. Or if they had, it wasn't like for a long period of time or anything like that. So yeah, I didn't really, and not many of my family members had breastfed either. So, sort of, I didn't really know where to turn to get help. So it just, the option felt easier to turn to formula, and he thrived on it. So it wasn't an issue. But I was like, I've had my heart set on feeding him. So for it to work out like that, I did put a lot of pressure and blame on myself. But I know now, looking back, I shouldn't have done that. But I think it's quite a natural response as well.
And the thing I like to tell, like, my friends or anyone I know who has really, really wanted that breastfeeding journey and for whatever reason it hasn't worked out, it's like, if you look at a group of adults and you put them on a line, do you look at any adult and go, definitely formula fed? That is a formula fed adult. Like, you don't.
No, exactly. You really don't. And it's the same with different milestones, isn't it? You don't look at someone in primary school and go, oh, we definitely knew his ABCs before him, or she definitely walked before him. Like, you don't know, do you? It's not something that you carry around with you for.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, society, I think, sometimes plays a lot into it. But yeah, I don't hold any guilt or anything over it now because I did my best at the time, given the resources I had, and yeah, it is what it is.
And so how did you feel then? How long were you in hospital for? And then how did you feel kind of coming up towards that kind of wobbly day 4?
So 5 days in total. I was admitted on my due date and he was born. Was it 5 days? Oh, again, sorry, the date's
No,
always
it's a long time ago. Don't worry.
I think I was in for maybe a week in total. So no, it was 5 days. He was born 5 days late. Yeah, so admitted on my due date. He was born on the 3rd of August. And then 2 days. No, I had 5 nights in hospital all in all.
So not actually too much post-birth then?
No, but it was by choice as well because I was struggling because I'd struggled with the feeding and they had room for me. They actually suggested that I stayed, which was nice.
That's fantastic.
Because I know that's not always the case. If they were sort of full, it's quite conveyor belty, isn't it? And it's like, right, on you go now. We need this bed for someone else. But it didn't really feel like that, thankfully.
And I
just got a bit of extra help.
I just want to kind of say this to anyone whilst we're talking about it, because I had a similar thing in one of my births and I really struggled with feeding. And look, I'm not a medical professional and I can't speak on hospital policy, but I really struggled to feed one of my sons and I just basically said, I'm not leaving here until I can get him to latch. And I was really held my ground. and I don't know if they can force you to leave. Maybe they can, but it's so easy, especially as you become a mother, to feel like you're a hassle and to feel like, oh, okay, yeah, you want me to go? Yeah, of course, yeah, I'll pack up the bags. Yeah, no, I've just had a C-section, but no worries. Like, I'll get
we're
myself
quite
up.
accommodating, aren't we? Like trying to please.
Yeah, and
Please,
it's like, ultimately, if you want to breastfeed and you don't feel like you can feed your baby at that point, like as you say, like you did, take the support. And most hospitals have, I don't know that they're lactation specialists, but they're lactation feeding people, and you can press a button and they come to help you. Is that what you had?
So I got saw by the lactation consultant once, and they just confirmed that he wasn't feeding as frequently because he was so lethargic due to the diamorphine. But they were like, yeah, it looks like you're holding him well. His latch looks well. Like, that's all we can do for now. Then it was actually a healthcare assistant, an older lady, that helped me really get to grips with what I was doing. And I felt most confident after I'd seen her. But the bizarre thing was, when I was actually ready to leave and they sort of assessed me feeding him before I went, just to make sure I was happy and confident and able, the only way I could feed him was lay down on my side in like a side lying position. And at the time in hospital, that felt fine. And then we came home and then he wanted to feed. So I went to bed and I lay down and I got in position. And yeah, our first feed at home was like in a side laying position. And I was just like in awe of myself at what I was doing. And then after a few feeds and a few days, I think it might have been after that, I thought, I can't do this long term. Like, I can't get him to feed in any other position. Like, what happens if I'm walking around town and he needs a feed? I can't just
Lay
lie
down
on
in
the
Tesco.
floor. Yeah, or lie on a bench. Or I thought, whoa, like all of a sudden it just sort of hit me that the way that he was best fed, that suited him better in that position, really wasn't compatible with anything else. It was fine if I was at home, but we're quite outdoorsy people anyway. So we were up and out by I think he was 3 days old, 4 days old. I think we were going out. So yeah, by that point I was like, oh, I'll start pumping then. Like that can be the middle ground sort of thing. So he's still getting my milk, but I can feed him from a bottle. And I can't remember how long that lasted. I was just pumping as much as I could, as often as I could. Not really sticking to a schedule or anything. Just sort of going with the flow whenever I felt like I needed to. Looking back now, probably not the wisest thing to do so early on, but it worked for us for a short while. And then he was combi fed for a few weeks, and then eventually, just realising how much of a full-time job pumping is round the clock, I thought, no, he's having half formula anyway. So we're already doing the prep for the bottles and the sterilisation and all that good stuff in between. So the decision was just taken to that. Like, he was gaining weight and things, so it was fine. There was never ever a concern over it, really.
And you know what? People kind of go like, oh, hands up to breastfed babies and how hard that is. Hands up to parents who exclusively bottle feed. My goodness, there is so much involved. If you've not done it before, when I started doing it with my boys, God, the stuff you've got to have, the kits,
it's wild. It's around the clock. Like, people don't realise, bottle fed babies, they're usually on a 3 to 4 hour schedule. Breastfed babies when they're close to feeding, it's, God knows, it could be 20 minutes or 2 hours you get from them. It's so sporadic. But now I've got an experience of doing both. So I've done fully formula, I've done combi feeding, I've done pumping, and I've exclusively breastfed as well.
What's easier?
I don't know. I don't know. I can't give you a simple answer. I'm very fortunate in the sense that my journey with my daughter breastfeeding, she took to it instantly. She taught me what to do. Never had any issues with her. It was literally good from day one, and we've just gone with the flow. But 2 different babies, 2 different birthing environments, 2 different pregnancies. So there's loads that comes into it, but Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's easier. I really don't. They've both got their, I wouldn't say cons. They've both definitely got their pros. I wouldn't say cons, but they've definitely got things that need to be considered.
Especially with breastfeeding, right? You get overtouched, overstimulated. Like, they've got to feed sometimes and you're like, oh.
But not again. Like,
Yeah.
you've only just come off me for 2 hours. Yeah, but yeah, it's wild. But if I went on to have a third, I don't know what I'd do. I can't tell you instantly, oh, yes, I'd exclusively breastfeed again, or yes, I'd exclusively formula feed, or oh, I'd do combi feeding from the offset.
Kind of depends on the baby, right?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. And maybe the birth as well, because I'm sure sort of if there was any birth trauma there or anything like that, you might have delayed milk production or loads of things come into it, don't they? But yeah, it's quite a journey with both of them and their feeding experiences, to be fair.
And actually, just while we talk about that, I wanted to mention, like, if anyone has had a bad experience in maybe their first birth or pregnancy with breastfeeding and it's been a real struggle and for whatever reason it has or hasn't continued and you're feeling like bummed out about that, your second baby or your third baby, you're not guaranteed to have that same journey. So just because it hasn't worked out for you the first or second or third time doesn't mean that it wouldn't be different, because every baby is so different. Like, as you're saying, some babies really take to it, don't they? Like a duck to water.
Yeah, exactly that. That's really good advice, actually, because loads of things play the part. Definitely birth environment, how the pregnancy's gone, any birth trauma, anything like that. There's so many things that the baby's temperament, the baby's weight, like it's if they're sort of a well baby or sort of poorly at birth or anything like that. There's so much that can play a part into how your journey can go. You just don't know, but yeah.
And actually, one support tool, sorry to interrupt, that I used with one of my boys was, I'm going to get the name wrong of what they are, but it's like your local family hub, where you go and get your baby weighed and that kind of stuff. You can go there and they'll have like breastfeeding support groups where you can go and chat to other women and they can help you teach your baby how to latch and you can chat to people and stuff like that. So that's a really good tool to use as well.
Yeah, our town has a few of those, which I made good use of in the early days, and that was one of the places that really got me confident to feed in public. I didn't really ever have an issue with feeding in public; it was never a thing, but that helped definitely with sort of, because we were all feeding in the same way, sort of in the room, and you could sort of see how people managed it with older babies, younger babies, all being at sort of different stages. So it was helpful to have advice and sort of guidance from not even the sort of peer supporters, but actually the other mums, because they're in it. I know the peer supporters are sort of trained in it, but a lot of it they just sing from one hymn sheet, don't they? And it like breastfeeding or feeding in general isn't a one size fits all. Yes, a baby needs to be fed, but that's the goal. But how they get fed and making sure mum's happy as well, like, it's a learning thing, isn't it, as you go? Yeah, it's definitely eye-opening though.
Yeah, so Erin, do you have any kind of pieces of advice or wisdom or anything that you would say to a woman who's going through an induction process or is maybe nervous to have an induction or is like, oh, I actually absolutely don't want one? You've obviously had a really positive experience. What would you say to a woman?
Know your options. Research your options, sort of research the pros and cons or any advice, side effects that each give you. Maybe have sort of a plan A and plan B. My thing was sort of expect the unexpected. Don't shoot down anything for any reason. Sort of be informed and just look at all your options and know that everything is an option. It's not, you don't have to do anything. If like checks and things like that going on a CTG, they're all options. Just as long as you've made an informed, you're informed and you're making a wise decision on what's best or what you deem is best for you in that moment and your baby in that moment. There is no right or wrong.
Yeah,
you just got to trust your body and trust your intuition as well, because that starts way before baby's born. You have that all during your pregnancy. Like, just trust your gut, because a gut feeling is there for a reason, and we should trust it. We should lean into it and trust it, basically. Trust the instinct, because it's there for a reason.
Oh, Erin, it's been so nice talking to you, and you've had such a great experience. I'm so glad that I've had you come on and share it, because it's nice to get some really good positive birth experiences coming out. And I'd love to hear your second birth, so we'll have to get you back on the pod if you're keen.
Oh, yes, please. I'd love that. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Really hope you enjoyed today's episode. And as always, please do give us a follow, like, or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you haven't done so already, please pass us on to any friends who are expecting and are listening to birth stories at the moment. And if you have a birth story you want to share, I definitely want to hear it. So please do get in touch. You can get in touch via my contact form on my website, which is britishbirthingstories.com, or you can head to my social media accounts, which is Instagram and TikTok. I'm also on YouTube, and you can just get in touch via message on there. Thanks so much, and see you next week.